Well, here we are again. I didn't think I'd be doing another custom archetype video, but the last one I did was met with overwhelmingly positive feedback, and it got more views than any of my discussion videos and most of my deck profiles, so I've decided to do another one. As with before, I should preface this by saying I'm not really into the whole custom card community. While it is fun and fulfilling to do something creative like this, I'm not really interested in playing with custom cards, so don't expect to ever see these in action on the channel. Likewise, I'm not certain if this is a series I'll be continuing. Maybe the first video just did well because it was something new and different. So if you'd like to see more of this, be sure to show your support by hitting that like button. If we can get, 1,200 likes in the first week, I'll look into making a third episode. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get right into the design. So to start with, I should state my goals with this archetype, which was mostly to do things differently than my last custom archetype. If you missed it, the Mark was a pretty casual set of cards based off a pre-existing Yu-Gi-Oh card called Engraver of the Mark. I modeled both the card effects and the visual theming of the archetype after that one card, and focused on creating a fun and cohesive set of effects, rather than designing anything powerful. It was also a fairly large archetype, consisting of 14 new cards, in addition to the original engraver. This time, I've gone for just 10 cards, and while they're still far from being meta, they do have some very powerful effects that could potentially be broken in the right hands. Speaking of which, side note, if you could think of any neat combos to abuse these cards that would make them broken, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to see what interesting synergies I missed. But I digress. In addition to having a smaller, stronger archetype, I decided to design this from scratch this time, instead of basing it off of a pre-existing card. I started with the monster effects first. I always liked battle hand traps like Tragodia and Gores, so I thought of doing something similar, a defensive card that summons itself in the battle phase and forces your opponent to halt their attack and deal with it. Removal is really easy these days, so I wanted the monsters to have a powerful effect on your turn, so that if your opponent didn't deal with them in main phase 2, you could come back with a strong counterattack. To accomplish this, I decided to make them flip effect monsters that summon themselves from your hand face down when your opponent declares an attack. Your opponent can then either attack into them and deal with whatever flip effects that happen, or go into main phase 2 and try to get rid of the monsters before you can flip them on your turn. This idea of a monster jumping onto the field in defense mode reminded me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because they're like ninjas. They come out of the darkness and they've got that tough shell. So I decided to theme their art after them. Of course, just picking one artistic inspiration is the sign of amateur card design. Real designers combine two completely unrelated things. Cough, cough, Cosmo. So I decided to mix the 4 turtles with another Fab 4 you might be familiar with, a certain group of musicians who may or may not have been one of the most influential music groups of the last century. With the musical edition, they were no longer Ninja Turtles. They had a class change. They were Bard Turtles. Or if you want to save time, the Bardles. There are 4 of them, of course: Lennon, Harrison, McCartney, and Starr, each with their own different attributes, instruments, and stats, but sharing a lot in common. They're all level 5 reptile-type flip effect monsters, which share the following effect text. When your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in face-down defense position. You can only activate each effect of insert monster name here once per turn. As for what makes them different, let's go down the line. Lennon, the Bardle vocalist, is a water monster with 1500 attack, 2500 defense, and being the peace-loving hippie he is, his flip effect reduces the attack of all monsters your opponent controls to 0. Harrison, the Bardle guitarist, is an earth monster with 1000 attack, 3000 defense, and similarly likes to prevent violence, though he does it in a more experimental way. His flip effect states, until the end of this turn, the next 2 cards or effects your opponent activates are negated. In sharp contrast to those two, McCartney, the Bardle bassist, is a fire monster with 2,000 attack and defense, and his effect is essentially a mirror force in a half shell. When he's flipped, he destroys all attack position monsters your opponent controls. And finally we have the other one. Star, the Bardle drummer, is a wind monster with 0 attack and 0 defense, but he gains 800 to both stats for every monster you control. And his flip effect gives every monster on your field a 1500 attack and defense boost, making him somewhat of a multiplying factor. On his own, he sucks, but with the other 3, he becomes a massive 3200 beater and puts their attacks into similarly high ranges. These 4 are the main crux of the deck. If you can get multiples of them on the field and resolve their effects, they can be pretty devastating, clearing the field and dealing massive amounts of damage. In order to facilitate this, the archetype has 2 additional monsters and 4 spell traps that act as support. Starting with the monsters, Mixmaster Martin is a level 4 light beast-type monster with 500 attack and defense, which states you can activate one of the following effects. Quick effect. Special summon 1 Bardle monster from your graveyard in face-down defense position, or flip 1 face-up Bardle monster into face-down defense position. You can only activate 1 effect of Mixmaster Martin per turn, and only once that turn. Joining him is Metal Shredder Yugioh, a level 6 Dark Warrior-type monster with 2,000 attack, 0 defense, and the following effects. First, if a Bardle monster leaves the field because of an opponent's card or effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then, if that card is banished or in the graveyard, add it to your hand. Second, once per turn, quick effect, you can target 1 face-down monster you control, flip it into face-up defense position. These 2 not only help you deal with the removal of your Bardles by recurring them from the graveyard, but they also help you extend your plays by flipping your monsters back and forth between face-up and face-down. Moving on to our spell trap lineup, we start, of course, with Meet the Bardles, a normal spell card with a hard once per turn effect that says, reveal 4 Bardles with different names from your deck. Your opponent chooses one of them to add to your hand, then send the rest to the graveyard. This might be a bit strong since it searches and sets up the graveyard, similar to the eternally banished card Painful Choice, but I felt like it was balanced out by the fact that you need all 4 Bardles in your deck to activate it, your opponent chooses the monster you get, and just the fact that it was locked to this archetype of level 5 flip effect monsters. After that we have Bardle Mania, a continuous trap with 2 effects. First is a continuous effect that simply states, the activation of Bardle monster effects cannot be negated. The second activated effect is a hard once per turn that says, if you special summon a Bardle from your hand, you can add 1 other Bardle monster, or a monster that specifically mentions Bardle in its card text, from your deck to your hand. Overall, just some nice protection and additional search power that comes in the form of a slow and vulnerable continuous trap. Moving on with the story of their career, we have Out of the Spotlight, a quick play spell that simply states, return 1 Bardle monster you control to the hand, and if you do, return 1 monster your opponent controls to their hand. This gives the deck some much needed removal, while allowing you to dodge your Bardles out of harm's way. It doesn't target either monster, which may be a bit overpowered, but once again, I feel like it's fine in an archetype like this that is otherwise very slow. Finally, rounding out the lineup, we have Reunion Tour, a normal trap, which serves as the deck's primary win condition. It states, activate only if you control no monsters. Your opponent gains 4,000 life points, special summon 4 Bardles with different names from your graveyard in face-down defense position. You cannot summon for the rest of the turn. In addition, it has a second effect that says you can banish this card from the graveyard, flip all face-down defense position monsters you control into face-up attack position. Of all the cards here, this is probably the most overpowered. After all, if you summon and flip all 4 Bardles on your turn, You'll destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters, reduce any remaining monsters to 0 attack, auto-negate their next 2 effects, and have a combined attack of more than 13,000. I tried to balance this out by making it an unsearchable trap card that locks you out of controlling or summoning any other monsters, and gives your opponents 4,000 life points. Even with those life points, you could still OTK on an open board, but just barely. So if your opponent can negate just one of your effects, or put up a defense wall to protect them from just one attack, they can live to see the next turn. I should also point out that the life point gain is part of the card's cost, making the activation somewhat risky since your opponent still gains the life points even if the card gets negated. You can activate 2 per turn, it doesn't have a once per turn clause on it, but at that point, your opponent will definitely have enough life points to survive your attack. With all those conditions, I think it's fair in Bardles. If anything, it might not be unfair enough. I might have put too many conditions onto it. You could tell me down in the comments. My main concern, actually, would be people using this with, like, bad reaction to Samochi to do 4,000 damage, or using, like, foolish burial goods to send this to the graveyard, and using it with other flip monsters, like Pot of the Forbiddens or Crawlers or something. I don't know, like I said, you'll have to tell me if you could think of any cool combos with this. And while you're down there in the comments, let me know how I did in general. Are these cards too powerful? Are they still not powerful enough? Did you like the art and the theming, or was it a little cheesy? Most importantly, would you like to see more custom archetypes? And if so, what would you like to see next time? Again, if we can get 1,200 likes on this during the first week, I'll put another one into production. We'll get it out there. And maybe I can even get better artwork for it next time. Oh, speaking of which, the art for these cards was made by my friend and collaborator Stoic Steve. He doesn't play Yu-Gi-Oh, but he appears frequently with me on my Legs Play channel. We did Minecraft recently, and he has a tiny Let's Play channel of his own if you're interested. Should be linked on the sidebar. I'll try to remember to put it down in the description too this time. Check those out, give him some thanks, let him know what you thought of the art if you enjoyed this video. Oh, also, last minute thing, I just learned as I was editing this, apparently fellow Yu-Gi tuber TheDuelLog is also putting out a custom archetype video on the same exact day. So if you're unfamiliar with TheDuelLog, go check him out, watch his video. He should also be linked on the sidebar. And then let us know whose archetype you liked the best, mine or his. Who is the better creator of custom cards? Or, you know, just subscribe to both of us. Have a dandy old time. It's a little network of Yu-Gi tubers. Anyway, that's it for now. Until next time, good luck, and have fun.